Thank you, Mark, for the kind words, and let me thank the PNG Business Council as well as the Australia-PNG Business Council for the kind invitation for myself and my delegation to be in attendance, and especially for me to be given this opportunity to speak to you at this important forum, people who pay tax, so that my taxman colleagues and our country is functional. Thank you very much for the gracious invitation. Madam President of the PNG Business Council, Ms. Noni Kulu, of course, Mark, in your capacity as President of the Australia Business Council, and for those of you who work in Papua New Guinea and have an address in PNG, I just want to say thank you, Mark, if you can offer my appreciation on behalf of Papua New Guinea to all Australian businesses who also operate in Papua New Guinea. Our two High Commissioners, His Excellency John Phillips, the Australia High Commissioner to Papua New Guinea, and of course, PNG's High Commissioner to Australia, His Excellency John Kelly. Thank you for your presence. My co-speaker here, one of Papua New Guinea's eminent son. He chose to be Papua New Guinean for many, many years, maybe much longer than I have been a Papua New Guinean. Professor Glenn Weller, thank you for your presence up front. But more importantly, let me step back and say thank you to men like you, a woman like you, who ensure PNG has remained functional for going 47 years now as an independent nation. Thank you, Professor Glenn Weller. We have many Papua New Guinean heads of department who are here, led by Ambassador Ivan Pomaga, the Secretary of Prime Minister's Department, and others who joined this auspicious forum. I also like to acknowledge the Governor of Bank of Papua New Guinea, Mr. Popatai, acknowledge the Commissioner General of the Internal Revenue Commission, Mr. Sam Coyne, and many other Papua New Guinean agency and department and business heads who are here. Thank you for being part of this occasion. It's certainly nice to be back in in-person meetings, and we hope that this is the way it should be going forward into the future. Needless to say, technology has assisted us very much in the last 2 or so years we've been grounded. Let me acknowledge Ewan McDonald. Thank you very much for your strong input in ensuring that we relate and function better or in a higher level these days. Your work as the key public servant in between Canberra and Port Moresby and Suva and many parts of the Pacific. Let me say thank you very much, and having said this, please pass my greatest appreciation to the Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese, for his kind words and his acknowledgement that this is an important conversation taking place in Brisbane. His words are certainly noted, and I'd like to congratulate him and the Labour Party for the election victory that culminated on Saturday evening. I was part of the team at the official residence of the High Commissioner in Port Moresby with His Excellency John Phillips. We were looking through the numbers, and it was certainly nice to see Labour doing a runaway. Of course, let me also pass my commensurations and appreciation to the member for Cook, the Honourable Scott Morrison, who I thought in defeat was gracious and really revealed that democracy does prevail in Australia and across PNG, and he made a good concessionary speech ensuring that leadership is passed on at the very earliest to the incoming Prime Minister. So both leaders need to be commended for a good transition that took place in Australia and as far as the election results are concerned. And we look forward to meeting with Mr. Albanese at the very earliest. In the last 3 years, I was Prime Minister, coincided with Mr. Scott Morrison's Prime Ministership. We elevated our relationship to not just an aid and donor sort of traditional relationship we've had for many, many years, but more importantly to the to be more strategic economic partners in our relationship, and I think that has been elevated to a higher level. And I look forward to working with Mr. Albanese and the Labour government in not just encouraging that, but making it come to pass. And my presence here this morning in the Australia-PNG Business Forum is indication in that order and in that line of thinking. Australia being the closest nation to PNG, and where PNG is home to more Australian businesses, if I'm not wrong, than anywhere else in the world. The conversations on economic relationships is not just relevant for today and contemporary for today, but is futuristic. That's the way it will be going forward into the future, and I look forward to working with the Labour government, and of course my nation look forward to working with any government that comes into Australia leadership into the future, and we are very happy to be associated with this esteemed forum. But back to today's occasion, let me say all of us are coming out from the adversity or the adversities of the last 3 or 2 years. COVID-19 has affected not just Australia and Papua New Guinea, but the global economy, though it might be a health issue, as Professor Mola knows it, but the health of individuals and health of society has a direct consequence on the health of our economy, both locally and globally. So COVID-19 has affected our individual lives, our livelihood, as well as our economies. And thinking that we've come out of COVID-19, the unfortunate travesty that is happening at Ukraine at the moment also adds fuel to the fire as far as our economic burdens are concerned. Both Papua New Guinea and Australia also feeling the effect and brunt of these global travesties. But thankfully, by the grace of God, our two nations sort of evading the worst of these adversities, and we're now coming out from it. Our two countries have prevailed, and our citizens and businesses are not doing too bad comparing to many parts of planet Earth. And I'd just like to say from our front, from Papua New Guinea perspective, we appreciate that the God of the universe has kept our country safe. When you look at COVID-19, many thought Papua New Guinea would be the worst place in Pacific. Our health system is totally dilapidated, run down. When I took office, it wasn't a nice situation. The status quo was not good. But we've now come out of it 2 years after COVID-19 first hit our shores. With less than 700 deaths, people are picking up lives and getting back to work. So I can't take full or all credit for this seemingly unscathed pass-through from COVID-19, although it is still very much a real threat because our health system still remains weak, and maybe Professor Mola is better qualified to speak because he's right there in the face of those situations. I just want to say we have really literally come out of it, and government has placed his pulses, or our pulses, our hands on the pulses of COVID-19 and our economy. We were amongst the first nations to lock in our borders, to take stock of what is happening. We were amongst the first nations to pass law relative to managing and looking after our economy and our people during the COVID-19 times. And so our policy interventions, however small or however ineffective it may have been, but we did our best to ensure that businesses survive, people survive, and our country is able to sail through the turbulences of the economic storm and associated issues that comes with COVID-19 as far as its effect on our economy is concerned. Australia too did likewise, ladies and gentlemen. I can't speak much on Australia policies, but Australia also was sensitive to living in Pacific neighborhood, leader in the Pacific neighborhood, their own domestic policies to look after Australian interests and Australian business was not in isolation. They were very much cognizant to the way they should be leader in the Pacific. And let me also step back and say thank you very much. Even now, please say thank you to Canberra for a very responsive foreign and regional policies that embraced the Pacific neighborhood. Thank you very much, Canberra. Papua New Guinea is a great benefactor to such policies by Australian government. In the 46 years of our nationhood, there have been few times, in fact maybe there has never been a time before when there were direct budget support to our government. We were blessed with direct budget support from Canberra and from Australia into PNG. We are blessed also with interventions made especially to key enabling infrastructures that should anchor our economy, one of which is the intervention into our ports and strategy ports in our country. And so those interventions through policies made in Canberra or in Australia were able to assist my own government's view that when the economy gets tough, government must be expansionary as far as our fiscal policy is concerned, so that the economy gets assisted when business capital is getting tighter or is getting scarce due to tough economic times. And so my government, last 3 years, was deliberate in being expansionary. We put in economic policies and we put in government planning programs, government planning programs and budget policies, key programs to ensure that government spend money in the economy to maintain economic stimulus and sufficient liquidity so that we in our country do not contract or stay bigger in the face of economic hardships that are caused by the global COVID-19. We went big in as far as our spending is concerned. In case you have not noted, and I know my good friend Chairman Costas, who in most times when he speaks with me is quite hard in ensuring that we do the right thing for the economy. Chairman Costas is in this meeting. But in case he or BSV has not noted, or any one of you have not noted, BSV was able to declare the biggest ever dividend in the entire history in 2021. They posted over 1 billion kina in dividends last year. That happens in a year when Papua hasn't reopened this yet. That happened in a year when Wafi Golpu is still a concept. And by the way, on Wafi Golpu, we almost turning the final corner to make the project a reality. That happened in a year when Papua LNG and Penang LNG construction has not taken place as yet. And so for BSP to post over 1 billion kina profit or dividend declaration last year is a testament that my government's or our government's expansionary intervention in the economy is keeping sufficient liquidity in Papua New Guinea economy and keeping it afloat. In the 3 years we have been leading our country, we have spent to the tune of 56 billion kina, the aggregate sum of 2019 budget or supplementary budget my government introduced, 2020 budget and 2021 budget. That 56 billion kina, and of course assisted by softer lendings, we picked from credible partners, bilateral partners like Australia and Japan, and established global lending institutions like IMF, World Bank and ADB. We were able to support our budget in the deficit component of our budget, as well as our own internal revenue. By the way, when we placed in the Mr. Kwame and new leadership in both customs and IRC, they were able to operate at maximum total to raise every revenue we forecasted to raise in 2019, 2020, and 2021. So the 56 billion kina we were able to spend in the aggregate of 3 annual budget I presided over enabled us to keep on growing the economy, supply sufficient liquidity, and I take note of the issues at Forex we have with the central bank and the currency transactions. But we have been at work in the last 2 years. Key government programs that we deliberately initiated. For instance, the over 153 roads under the Australia-PNG policy we have running all over the country, the port interventions, the airport interventions, the infrastructure interventions we're making, the transfer of resources to district and provincial governments to ensure they engaging small localized contractors to work in the districts and provinces, fully funding our health and educational institutions and our services, paying our public servants on time. And needless to remind most of you, I was finance minister for 8 years before I took this designation. 8 years I was finance minister, sometimes we were lacking behind in paying our bills. But we took office, we knew that when the economy is tighter, government must spend so that the local economy has stimulus, spend as stimulus. So we've been paying our public servants on time. We in fact pick up paying retirees what was owed to them for many, many years. Those were some of our government's intended interventions in the economy so that those who do business in PNG are able to be functioning in as far as business are concerned. So the last 3 years, for instance, when I took office, our economy was 79.4 billion Guinea economy. Today, starting in 2022, and when we handed down our budget last year, our treasurer forecasted our economy to be at 101 billion Guinea economy. The hard-working treasurer has worked very hard. You go to World Bank site today, they forecasted in March that our economy by the end of this year would be 109 billion Guinea economy. That's just the last 2 years. In the last 2 short years or 3 years, we've been able to grow our economy by close to 20 billion Guinea plus. Now, when I look at our country's history, and I want to speak from a bigger perspective so all of you in business appreciate where we came from. In 1975, Papua New Guinea was an economy under 5 billion Guinea. And from 5 billion Guinea in 1975, from the last 46, now going 47 years, we have grown the 5 billion Guinea size of our economy to 79 billion Guinea in 2018. And when I took office in 2019, we were able to grow it from 79 billion Guinea to today over 100 billion Guinea economy. Not bad for a classified terror nation. Not bad for a nation that many think we will fail. But my point here today to you business houses here in Brisbane, Australia and Papua New Guinea is that as a nation we have come a long way. Yes, we have struggles along the way, but in the big picture we have a growing economy as our macro statistics indicate. Not all is bad. Whilst there may be prophets of doom and gloom for Papua New Guinea, and we've had those since 1975, and in the last 2 years, if we want to contextualize it, we were totally exposed and we were pushed to the margins of growth in as far as GDP and the economy is concerned. But locally, we are cognizant of the need to maintain a robust economy and ensure that our country still performs. And for the last 46 years, we brought our country from a 5 billion Guinea economy to 100 billion Guinea plus in just 46 years. All indication points that Papua New Guinea still stands every opportunity to grow into the future. Just to give you some statistics, in the last 3 years when it was hard, our inflation, whilst 5.5% is not that bad, many economies similar to Papua New Guinea economies are facing worse time, globally speaking, or regionally. Our inflation average at around 5.5 in the last 3 years. Just to point to you some seemingly success at the macro level, and the central bank governor will confirm, our foreign reserves today in the last 2 years we built to an all-time high. We're sitting at 10 billion Guinea mark as I speak. Never before has Papua New Guinea Central Bank, as we said, to the magnitude. When I was Finance Minister under O'Neill, his average number in his foreign reserve has always been around 5 billion kina. The last 3 years, we raised our foreign reserve to 10 billion kina mark today, and Mr. Popotai is sitting there, he will confirm this. We are on our fiscal consolidation pathway. Whilst our national debt at 51% may look high, but that is sustainable. And our treasurer headed down our budget last year. He looked into the future, especially in a 13-year window. We put forward a fiscal consolidation strategy and pathway. We saw that by 2027, our economy will hit our budget will be a modest surplus based on our fiscal consolidation pathway. And we looked into 7 more years, and we saw by 2033-34, if we were to aggressively reduce our national debt, we could then be debt-free by 2034. That modeling is minus numbers from Pinang gas project and minus number from Wafi-Golpu project. Last year when we went to budget, we only inputted Porgera startup in 2022 and Papua going into feed and construction in 2023, 2024 going forward. So if I were to add up other numbers, throwing Pinang numbers and throwing Wafi-Golpu, and last night we had a very fruitful discussion with a team from Harmony and Newcrest. And so if these numbers are all thrown into the economic modeling of my country, Papua New Guinea's future looks very bright in the immediate future as well as the long-term future. And our numbers are not done in isolation. We have restored credibility in our Treasury Department. That is why IMF and World Bank and ADB and Australia government and Japanese government all have access to our data. And based on those credibilities, these key reliable lenders have been lending, soft lending to us, most at consistent lending below 2%. I just want to step back for Australia's leadership in lending to us very, very consistent lending, 0% interest lending with a 5-year grace period, and that for us with a longer term repayment, 20 years. This sort of lending has come at the back of trust credibility. We've raised trust in our treasury. I just want to appreciate the Honourable Ian Saki for his stewardship and management of the economy. He has restored our treasury's credibility. Our numbers in our economy are not just crunched at treasury, but central bank crunches the numbers, IMF crunches the numbers, World Bank crunches the numbers, and ADB crunches the numbers. And when I talk about our economy hitting our budget hitting surplus in 2027 and possible national debt reduction in 2034, the numbers are seen by all who know economic numbers, and they're looking into the future with me and see that Papua New Guinea is on a positive trajectory. In the last 46 years, we raised our economy to 100 billion kina economy. I put to you that my conversation on 30th of March, May 2019, that PNG would hit a 200 billion kina economy by the end of this decade is not way too far off. It's not way too far off. And just to give you confidence in Papua New Guinea, lest we forget where we came from, in case we take ourselves for granted. When we get independence from our mother country in 1975, from Australia in 1975, infrastructures were non-existent to 90% of rural Papua New Guinea. Our population was amongst the least educated. At 1975, I was a 5-year-old Papua New Guinean. I spoke no English. I knew no telephone. I had no electricity over my house. But look at one generation of leaping from what was absolute vacuum back in 1975 to today operating and running my country in the digital space. In one generation, we have come from a background of nil or weak infrastructure, low educated population, And in terms of human development indexes, maybe amongst the weakest on earth, and today still remains weak, but we have still remained as one sovereign democracy 47 years on. We still remain united as one people, one nation, one country, though we are the most diverse nation, linguistically speaking, and culturally speaking, and tribally speaking, but we still remain as one people, one nation, one country. And we will still remain as one people, one nation, and one country going forward into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, today in the face of 2022 general elections, come what may, I can assure you Papua New Guinea will live on with or without James Marape. Politicians can come and go, but Papua New Guinea as a robust democracy will live on into the future. We have survived economic turbulences. We have survived law and order issues. We have survived changes of government. We have survived natural calamities and many, many more challenges. But we have remained together as one people, one nation, one country. We are getting bigger, better, and stronger today, and we will be into the future. And as a matter of assurance to each and every one of you who have business interest in Papua New Guinea, I just want to say at this juncture, thank you very much to all of you who have contributed to the success of PNG the last 46 years. Thank you very much, all the business houses in Papua New Guinea. That journey, the last 46 years, would not have been possible without you paying your fair share of taxes. And I hear the issues of taxes, and I hear the many issues that you have. The fact that I am here today must assure you that we're not a government on ugly towers. We have our ears on the ground. We know that your health and your well-being contributes to the health and well-being of our country. And so we will be responsive to issues that you feel needs to be attended to by government. That is our job, to make sure that our country remains a fair place for everyone. I want to assure you, in the midst of our diversities, diversity of our tribal affiliations, diversity of our cultural backgrounds, diversity of our opinions, including politics, our nation has prevailed based on what I label as two fundamental anchors of our sovereignty. That is the Christian worldview we have, and of course, the democratic fundamentals that our country subscribes to. The robustness of our democracy has been tested time in, time out, and we remain few amongst many. This is why we are a nation of free enterprise, trade, commerce, and we are a robust capitalistic economy. This tenet of our democracy will never be compromised. By my generation or my cherished generation, we will pass on into the future our commitment to anchoring our democracy, ensuring the democratic ideals like free speech, free capitalistic environment, and the independence of judiciary, as I mentioned earlier, is entrenched now and for the better. And those will be part of our national character as a country going forward into the future. That is why I say PNG is a good place to remain in business. And yes, I must be the first to admit that we do have a fair share of problems. But as leaders and present leaders and leaders of tomorrow and in the oncoming government or incoming government, I must give you all assurance that having recognized those weaknesses and deficiencies, we are also at work to ensure that those deficiencies are tidied and fixed. For instance, in the last 2 years when I came into office, I came at the back of fighting against corruption and government or agents of government expecting favor from businesses to do business with government. We came at the back of this one, and I promised to pass the 30-year outstanding Independent Commission of Corruption, a law that many past government promised, but they never delivered. I almost lost government in 2020 at the back of pushing strongly the Independent Commission of Corruption. Thankfully, by the grace of God, we passed this law. Today we have ICAC, an agency to complement Ombudsman Commission and police to fight against corruption. We passed the Whistleblowers Act, and one of the last laws before we rose this parliament was an amendment to the Proceeds of Crime Act to pass an undisclosed wealth bill that was posted to the Proceeds of Crime Act to ensure that Papua New Guinea and businesses who live in Papua New Guinea and public servants, all of us live honestly and earn an honest income and build from a honest income instead of having undisclosed wealth accumulation elsewhere. Those are just a brief indication to you who do business in PNG that we are not just talking and passing by as government and as parliament doing what it's supposed to do. We're working to fix on apparently inherent weaknesses we've been carrying on in the economy for so long. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to assure you, we will be still a country 46 years on, 47 years on. And if in the last 46 years we've come from the story I mentioned to you earlier, from where we were to where we are today, doomsayers and naysayers can remain where they are. But optimistic investors pick on the gains and the upsides of an economy. I read from Warren Buffett one time, he said, in down times, successful investors pick up where everybody else is left. Today I just want to point to you all about Papua New Guinea's prospect. If one LNG project in 2011 could almost exponentially grow our economy from where we were under 30 billion kina mark in 2008, 2009, 2010 and 2011 to a 70 billion kina plus in 2018. Today we're working with 5 projects, in my view, which will be catalyst for our economy to tilt past the 200 billion kina mark I envisaged, or I forecasted when I first took office as Prime Minister. This year we will reopen Porgera Gold Mine, and we, through negotiations, picked again Barrick as our investor, our partner investor and operator, at a better term for our investors and a better term for our PNG stakeholders, including our landlords. Last night I was reminded by the chairman of my state negotiating team, Secretary Barry Miller, that IRR is fixed. US investors, you know what your IRR is. Your rate on return on your investments. Papua New Guinea government under my watch, or any governments into the future, will always give respect to your IRR, because on that basis you make profit for your board and for your shareholders. But we will also like to be, as government, to give you certainty and security to any projects, especially the bigger projects, that government equity is an investment in their businesses which you're going for. If government has an equity stake in those businesses, then they become your security, so that the project's success is a collective success for both the government and PNG party beneficiaries, as well as you for your investors. Not just at the board level, but more importantly, a pass on to your shareholders. So government is working very hard to push and negotiate what may seem as an aggressive push for a better deal for Papua New Guineans, but all in cognizant to what developer peg as your IRR as far as those projects are concerned. And Wafi Golpu, at the moment, in our discussion, for instance, just to give you an example, the IRR for Wafi Golpu, they proposed when they present a submission for the gold project, range between 15 to 18%. Government going into negotiation to give respect to the proposal, so that we satisfy our stakeholders in our country, including the provinces and the landowners, and more importantly, total 88 million plus people of the country. And so such has been the reason why Porgera may seem slow, Wafi Golpu may seem slow, Pinyang may seem slow, Papua LNG may have a review into what we can gain from some of the slacks of the agreement. But I just want to give this forum assurance. These 5 projects that I labeled, Papua moving ahead, Pinyang coming sequence after Papua LNG based on our signing with ExxonMobil, Wafi Golpu also coming within the next 2-3 years of 5-6 years of construction as well as production, and Cobra is starting up later this year. Combined, these 5 projects stand to catapult our economy to a 200 billion kina mark in this decade. That will be PNG going forward in a quick snapshot in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. For those of you who are in subsidiary business or service business or support our economy in various businesses that you operate inside, and I know I speak to over 5,000 Australian businesses who have addresses in Port Moresby. You're helping operating in the economy and the 100 billion kina mark. That's why the next 10 years there's a doubling of the economy. And I just want to encourage you, plan yourself, participate with Papua New Guinea. I'm coming to you in the first instance. I could have gone off north or south or west or east. I've come to you in the first instance as I came to Australia when I first became Prime Minister. This is a deliberate effort and not just purely coincidental. When I became Prime Minister, I could have chosen to visit Japan, or visit Philippines, or visit Indonesia, or visit China, or USA. But my first port of call was to Canberra. This is simply because I know Papua New Guinea and Australian relationship is deep. We are sisters and brothers. You gave our democracy. You and I started on this road together. We have no choice. We live in this part of the world forever, start side by side. And so I have to ensure that we reconfigure government to government relationship, public service to public service relationship, business to business relationship, and of course, people to people relationship. And I'm here talking to you, Australian businesses and PNG business will coexist. We are operating in exciting times. The title of the speech, the title given to me for my conversation today was about winds of change happening. It was about the future is now, the change is coming, or something like this. Of course, that's just what I've been speaking to you. We've come the last 46 years. And you must see opportunities happening in PNG. I just want you all to find a place for business in PNG. And if there is a new area that you'd like to move into, I just would like to pause and point to you some aspects of Papua New Guinea benefit. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking on a little bit, but 5 more minutes, I'm done. 5 more minutes. APEC, Texas, they need to understand where we are coming from. Papua New Guinea is placed in a far better advantage and pivotal placing than most emerging economies and markets. Closer to home in the Asian region and APEC region, as well as in other parts of the world, we are far better place for investment. We are members of APEC, the smallest economy, but members in the APEC economy. 60% of global economy, we're linked to the APEC economies. And most importantly, Papua New Guinea has deeper personal bilateral relationship with 10 of the top 10 global economies. Most of them are in fact in the APEC economy, and APEC family of nations. The biggest economy, USA, for instance, Papua New Guinea has deep, binding, personal relationship with USA. The second biggest economy in China and the growing economy and tiger economy into the future, we have deep personal relationship. It's just a one phone call away for businesses, and government can be your assistance to secure your market or to give access to PNG resident businesses into the Chinese marketplace. The 10th biggest economy in Japan, they've been partners with us since World War II. Half of the country was a place that they operated inside. We still remain very close bilateral partners. In fact, in 2020, the foreign minister visited me and went back with a 0.01% lending of $280 million into our country in 2020. They're very close to Papua New Guinea. The fourth biggest economy, in Germany. We were half German New Guinea before, they still remain close to us. The fifth biggest economy in UK, the United Kingdom, we still linked to and we're a constitutional monarchy linked to the Queen as head of our state. We have access to them, and I see steamships in the house. The steamships has been part of us since steamship's story with us is since 1908, if I'm not wrong, or the early 1900s. The sixth biggest economy, possibly India. We have a deep bilateral relationship with India. And I can go on and on. Seventh biggest economy, France. Total is now a resident business resident in our country. Seventh biggest economy, France. We have a strong bilateral relationship with France. And South Korea, the 10th biggest economy, we have strong bilateral relations with. Of course, Australia, the 13th biggest economy, we have strong bilateral relationships. So Papua New Guinea has good bilateral relationships with strong economies globally. We in PNG as a robust democracy in the contest between democracy and other forms of government in the Asian neighborhoods, going into the future when we reform our marketplace, secure economy with the fundamentals and the enabling environments, our country will be a place of investment, and from there you could trade with APEC, you can trade with Asian, and of course our leadership in the Pacific Island nations is the reason why PNG's resources in the energy sector, PNG resources in the mineral and petroleum sector, and our resources in the abundance of food from our sea and land can be a place where you businesses look into. When I talk about food from our seas and land, I look at Philippines, a nation of 110 million people. They live in a land-sized under 300,000 square kilometers of land. There are 110 million people. 10 years from today, 20 years from today, we'll be needing consistent supply of food and fish. More so organic food and fish for the affluent and wealthy. Papua New Guinea has the ability to be a supplier of organic food and healthy food from our seas and from our land. And so I just want to point all of you away from the traditional mining and petroleum sector businesses and the spin-offs that emanate from these type of businesses to a more sustainable business for yourselves going forward. If steamships has operated in our country well over 100 years now, not directly in the mining space, but in the service sector and in the agricultural sector, then I point to each and every one of you, my government, and my generation of leaders. Our focus is now on transforming PNG to be an exporter of processed local produce in our country instead of raw export of agriculture, raw export of forestry products, raw export of fisheries products, and raw exports of products from our minerals and oil and gas. We're now moving in a big way into the downstream sector space. We have established special economic zones by policy and by law and legislations, and we'll be moving in the next 5 years into actually enabling fiscal infrastructures in our special economic zones that will attract tax concessions, discounts, and protection of law, so that they become an incubation hub of our focus to be a nation of exporting processed produces from our land instead of raw export from our land. So I point to all of you businesses here today, PNG business and Australian business. Join with me into looking into value adding in my economy and go into the space of downstream processing. My timbers, by 2025 we will stop all run-log export, so that those who come in and partner in that space can sell back finished produces to Australia, to the world, to the Asian marketplace. I point to you our focus on agriculture and the downstream focus on agriculture, selling of processed coffee, processed cocoa, processed coconut oil, processed food. And so those are the pathway we have outlaid for our future. Australian businesses have found success in our country. I just ask all of you to join me in the future I am seeing for my country. Australian companies have found success in Papua New Guinea on a big scale. Lately, you would have noted the subsuming of oil sets into Santos, or the major oil sets into Santos, taking place not too many months ago. That is an indication that Santos has a vote of confidence in PNG. Happening under tough times, Santos was able to merge with oil sets, replacing what was originally oil sits on its own with the bigger Santos today. And that happened not too long ago. You have Telstra trying to come in and also take or buy out DCCL. And not to mention Fortescue Future Industries looking into the area of clean green energy in our country. There's indications that Australian companies at that level having confidence and interest in my country's economy and business opportunities. For those of you who've been part of our story for a long time, I just want you to take a pause and go back to your boardroom and look at how you could partner us to move into some of the areas that I pointed to, especially in the area of downstream processing. 10 million mouths in PNG to feed, and we have the world around us. Next door to us in Indonesia, 270 million Indonesians who need food and energy and water. I just point to all of you in the house. Instead of remaining comfort at the current comfort level, there may be other areas of business that you can do. And talk about other areas of business, well, for instance, you introduced rugby league to us, Australians. And rugby league is a major favorite pastime. Almost some say religion, but I don't classify rugby league as a religion. It's a favorite pastime, I'll put it that way. And so we're now pushing for the 18th NRL team. And for those of you who are linked, you're linked to NRL, and I tell my friends in Telstra who are linked to NRL, you got more market in PNG than you would have in New Zealand, or another third team in Brisbane. You already have a 10 million kina market. We're not taking rugby league as a sport anymore. We're spinning rugby league as part of the economy and business structure in PNG. That's the way we diversify economy, converting sports as pastime into business and commerce. And so our economy is in transition. We're moving towards a modern economy. I just gave you one example of rugby league. We're bidding to field an 18 team and moving away from just sport and leisure and pastime into something that is part of our modern economy. And so Papua New Guinea is getting on in business. Some of the inherent deficiencies we carry in our system will be worked upon, and I'd just like to conclude by saying, in the next 5 years, whoever comes into office, and if you want to bet, you can bet on me, most truly I will come back. By going by past 36, nothing funny about this one, but past 36, we had National Alliance going to election in 2007, they came back. PNC went to election in 2012 and 17, they came back. And if probabilities of 36 and past is an indication, I stand higher chance of coming back with my pangu into office. And if we come back into office, or if I don't come back, I will pass on a good head of a note to whoever comes into office, like my friend Scott Morrison did. Some of the notes would include this. We will ensure we have ease of business registration, and we will modernize that and expedite in the area of business registration, and to give comfort to those who want to do business. There must not be hassle at the point of entry or maintaining you in our country. We'll modernize our tax regimes to ensure that your tax issues are heard clearly, but we're giving special tax concessions to those who will operate in our special economic zones. Our special economic zones will be linked with good modern infrastructures. We work to ensure that the enabling infrastructures give support to this business to exist. We'll try our very best, and I give commitment. The next 5 years, one of the major issues I will attend to is to ensure that the full law and order space is worked on, from police to lower courts to the higher courts, ensure that it is functional effectively to put to rest any tensions in society and give our country a fair place to operate inside. We will ensure that the financial sector is functioning well, supporting the market, from the central bank to the banking space, with minimal government interventions, but work with central bank to ensure that their monetary policy is complementary to the fiscal policy, and to ensure we are functioning, and government's intervention into the economy continuously would be, for instance, allowing for lower cost borrowings by businesses to ensure businesses are graduating from where they are to the next levels. Those were some issues, and there were some more issues that if you, Mark and Nunu and the team here, feel that needs to be mentioned, please at any time do suggest to us how we as government can work to make it happen. In conclusion, let me say the path that we are traveling on today is not new. In 2010, when the Grand Chief Marape, the father of our nation, passed on the Vision 2050, the Vision 2050 of our nation mentions that in this decade, from 2020 to 2030, we would raise the economic level in our country and bring our focus as government to the economic space. This decade is a decade our focus will be on the economy. I gave you a snapshot that the economy would traject from where it is today. If I could raise in hard times from a 79 billion economy in 2018 to 101 billion Kenya as per our 2022 budget for the last 3 years, there is all indication that we will grow into the future. I give you my full commitment. My commitment, as first stated in my inaugural address in May 30, 2019, to focus our country to grow to be an economic powerhouse nation in our part of the world. I labeled as the richest black Christian nation. That focus still remains. Many misread that statement. That statement is all about a national vision. I encapsulated Somalia's Vision 2050 to one punchline, to give hope to my people that they can do it, they can protect the economy, we can grow as a country. From where we've come from in a black past to a rich future, having Christian identity right, carrying the fabric of our nationhood, our country will grow into the future. Jump on board with me if you haven't come in yet. For those who are looking at a place of investment, if it is still a greenfield for you, jump on board, because steamships and oil sales and many companies have remained with us for the last 46 years, if not more than 46 years, and they're still here today. I thank each and every one for listening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. And if I have spoken long, my sincere apologies, but I believe I've fed you with enough information for you to maintain your presence in PNG, because that is the place to invest going forward into the future. God bless.